Hey y'all, we are catching up on where Mercury has been in these last couple of days, and we have 2 degrees to go through. Jupiter is still in the same sign. And so if you missed the first video and you're interested in this stuff, go watch that one. We're tracing the retrogrades of Mercury as well as Jupiter and working with them to reflect on our own behavior. It's really fun stuff. And then especially if you have major planets in these parts of your chart, it can get really interesting. Right now, Mercury is transiting through early Sagittarius, moving retrograde, so backwards through the zodiac. Retrogrades are not a literal moving backwards in the sky. They just appear from our perspective to be moving backwards. So during a Mercury retrograde, things work differently as it relates to communication. And that can be communication within yourself, outside of yourself. There's a lot of technology related communication that we do, anything like telepathy, communication. I mean, even our economics, a lot of them are tied up with technology now and they move differently than they did before. So if you're talking physical resources, that's more of a Taurus thing. If you're talking intangible assets, a lot of times that's more of a Mercury Gemini thing. All right, so right now Mercury is at Sagittarius 3, but we skipped where he moved through in the last couple of days. So why don't we catch up first and then we'll get to where he is right now. So as I talk about these Sabian symbols for the degrees of the zodiac, think about whether you've had experiences come up for you within the last few days related to what I'm talking about and converge that with the planet Mercury. And so we're talking about communication for the most part here, right? So Sagittarius 4 is a little child learning to walk. Support and guidance, there is always someone to help, being open to kindness and helpfulness. As we move through the struggle of life, trying to keep up some balance while we take on yet another full-on challenge, it is very helpful to remember that we have the support and guidance of a superior power and intelligence. As much as parents hold this role for children, so too do higher forces look upon us benignly, ever ready to respond to our asking for help. Whether this is seen as a higher aspect of self, or angels or spirit guides, are secondary questions to the primary point, which is we are not alone. Collective evolutionary processes guarantee connection and encouragement for all our individual needs. We come into life pre-programmed to meet it all on our own terms. We are never taught of the right of an individual to be free because it is felt as self-evident at the core of our very being. Individuality develops as we learn skills, and our entitlement to learn them is unmistakable. We are, however, given plenty of instruction to help us awaken and master aspects of character and a complex skill set. The child even needs to learn how to walk, and inevitably this is done with parental involvement. Further instructions is offered by other members of the group, and this becomes a very important and dependable background to our lives. From birth to death, we are able to call upon guidance from our fellows, and they will gladly respond by sharing their wisdom, from tips on where to buy good produce to medical advice during old age. The constant stream of apt information is often taken for granted, yet is very much a part of our strength. It is very empowering to develop a list of useful contacts. Without a network of connections, we are lost and alone. Another quality included within the support framework of information exchange is that of encouragement. This is quite another matter, and it speaks of humanity's underlying dependable kindness. Typically, even a stranger will lace their traffic directions with a dose of goodwill. Our entire attitude of life is constructed around the premise that it is essentially helpful and kind. As a result of this reasonable expectation of supportive assistance, we tend to reach out more simply because we have fewer doubts about meeting a helpful stranger. This enables us to journeying on in life through the evolution process of rehearsal and perfecting. At the other end of the spectrum, we might imagine an isolated person, less confident of meeting helpful support from strangers, and diminished as a result. Not one who confidently takes the initiative, this person is less inclined to progress spiritually and more inclined to indulge in harmful pleasures. In the rut of a humdrum around inconsequential routines. Okay, so that's really interesting. I see some crossover here with where Jupiter is right now, which is the balance of resting without indulging too much in escapism. Have you had any interactions with these areas of thought within the last few days? I have been thinking about networks of support and how I can be supportive within the network. And then also, who can I call on for these help with these things that I'm going through right now? And I've also personally experienced so much recently in the last couple of years about how just getting out more out of my comfort zone. I always think of myself as somebody who is comfortable getting out of my comfort zone, but then the comfort zone expands a little bit, and then that's your comfort zone again, and you have to keep moving outward. And every time I do it, it's deeply uncomfortable. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to Sagittarius 3, which is where Mercury is currently transiting through. Sagittarius 3, two men playing chess, strategic training. Life must be strategically managed if we want to know happiness and success, carefully choosing the optimal path. One cannot excel at chess by allowing passions to occlude clarity of mind. So too in life. There is always another person to come up against as we pursue our agenda, and to cope with this, we need to take into account the other side of things. Where there is push, there is always pushback. Strategy is always met by counter-strategy, and thus relationship evolves. So too does our ability to find more subtle processes of mind, the way to reflect on the likely results and implications of our choices. The master sees with a broad vision, yet concentrates focus on only one outcome. There are those whose suffering causes them to believe that suffering is inevitable. This leads to furthering of victimhood. In order effectively to participate in life, this attitude needs to be corrected. To profit in every situation, we first need to accept fully the responsibility for having brought it upon ourselves. With this highly mature and self-empowering approach, we are motivated to raise our skills, to discipline our understandings, and to mobilize our fullest potential. Like the two chess players, we have chosen to engage on equal terms with life in order to refine who we are and what we can do, presumably enjoying the process. A secondary aspect of the development of our abilities has to do with how we present them to the world. We find that exactitude and bigotry tend to be disliked, and so are usually counterproductive. Challenges and other events call for a high degree of confidence, and the authority of ability are often fraught and require sensitive management. So any attempt to claim importance can undermine our effectiveness. What does, in fact, optimize our ability to hold sway and resolve events to our satisfaction is concentration. The quality of genius is dependent on sustained single-pointed focus. Yet this is only one side. On the other hand, we also need a wide panorama of vision that we embrace all possibilities. The chess master sees all potential moves and keeps them all in mind. Thus, we see the formula for success: broad vision and pinpoint focus. Each of these is a skill to be identified, developed, nurtured, and practiced, and yet they only begin to operate when we sit down at the table to play with a realistic hope of winning. I really like this one too. What do you think about this? I find that for a lot of artsy people or people who, for good reason, are tired of working hard and grinding away at things, I feel you. But there's just also that element of truth in that you gotta focus to get stuff done. You gotta sit down, you gotta spend the time, you have to minimize distractions, you have to minimize input and external influence, at least for a time, while you're working on the things that you're working on. So yeah, each one of these symbols, I find them to be talking about one side of a coin. And it's not that the other side of the coin isn't equally as valid. It's just that attention needs to be paid to both sides of the coin and to find your own balance within that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get a card. I'm really just feeling one today. We'll ask about Sagittarius 3. So what's one way that we can lean more into Sagittarius 3 spirit? The river that dances to the sea, flow state, and trusting in the adventure, number 3. Yeah, well, getting in a flow state is definitely one of the ways that you can lock in and focus and get stuff done. That's not anything that we don't know. Trusting in the adventure, though, I think that's a little bit of a more masterful skill. Getting in the flow state is cool and good and awesome. Finding a way to access the flow state in a way that works for you. Like for me, a lot of the previously I came from the tech bro life hack field, and that was when I was a teenager. And some of those things worked for me really well, and some of them did not. For example, I'm not good at getting up early, and I don't love cold plunges. I've done a couple of them now, and they were a really good experience, but that's something that I don't have regular access to. So that's part of it. It's part of make a routine that works for you, that is accessible to you right now, and not necessarily building one that would be accessible to you in your dream life. It would be accessible to you right now. I do believe that manifestation is all about becoming the person that those things happen to, which is effectively making gradual change until you arrive at that person, but also enjoying the journey in between. So, and it says trusting in the adventure. So if you're called to go to the hot springs or go to the mountains and do a cold plunge or, have these experiences, I would say let yourself do them because sometimes when you let yourself have that adventure and then you come back to your normal environment, it inspires you to shake things up so that you can have a more inspiring environment or routine so that it's easier for you to get into the flow state because your environment now inspires you in a new way. You've shaken up your routine in a way that feels like you're experiencing time differently. So that's really huge for feeling like you have the time to do strategic focus. Not that you constantly have to be seeking new experiences, but if you tend to be someone who dwells within a very confined routine, that's something that really, really helps. Okay, cool. I will be back soon with the next degree of Mercury retrograde, and we'll pick it up from there. Bye.